Okay. So I have to share my screen. Anybody, could you let me know if you can see my presentation? It's the first slide. It says self-care at home and not the instructor slides.
I can
Awesome.
see it.
Thank you.
can see it. Yeah.
Well, then we will go ahead and get started. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. This is going to be a little bit of a loose workshop. I definitely have some concepts that I wanted to go over, but they're a little bit more broad and they're a little bit more topic-based than some of the other ones. Really knowing that self-care looks very different from person to person. But then also there are hundreds and thousands of websites and resources and ways that you can engage in self-care. So really I just wanted to talk about a couple concepts and then show some resources that TCU has available for you. And then really open it up for discussions if there's any ongoing questions or if you want to delve into certain topics a little bit more. So I think that's where we'll go. So first off, I definitely want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that there are many stressors that are going on. And when we're talking about self-care, it's really coming from a basis of understanding, not that we're trying to minimize, to get rid of, or to not even consider all of the different stressors that we have. We need to pay attention to those. We need to understand that we have, a list that I have up here, but then there's probably maybe even a dozen more different smaller stressors that have happened where we're trying to learn how to cohabitate with family, with roommates. We're in shelter in place, and so we don't have as much ability to leave and to go out and to separate ourselves from other people, so that can add a lot of stress. Online learning and really trying to adjust to that. I'm taking classes as well, and so that can start to get really tricky. Just on how to translate the material to an online, to Zoom instruction, taking tests online. Those are all new stressors to us and different stressors that are really difficult to try to wrap our mind around. And so coming at this from the basis of understanding that there's a lot of change and a lot of stress, but that even though we have all these stressors, we have all these changes, it doesn't mean that it has to define who we are. It doesn't have to dictate the way that we live our lives. We still have influence and control over so many different pieces of that. And so I think that just putting that in the framework for our minds can be really beneficial moving forward. And that's really where each one of the topics that we talk about moving forward is going to build from here. These are just some key concepts we're going to talk about, and I'll break each one of these out a little bit later on. We are going to do a couple mindfulness and relaxation techniques during this workshop. We're going to talk about physical activity and the benefits of that and how you can still try to stay active while at home with little to no equipment, some of those considerations. We're going to talk a little bit about time management and really kind of organizing your life, study schedules, staying track of everything that we have going on, given that we're not leaving to go to a classroom or we're not leaving to go to work. And just by taking us out of that routine can completely change the way that our brain reacts to all of the things that we have going on. So we're going to talk about schedules and breaks, organization and simplicity. We'll talk about reflection and reframing our thoughts, really trying to focus on being positive with our thoughts and focus on what we can do to change rather than being stuck on what is. And then we'll talk about some helpful resources at the end. So as we go through, you'll see screenshots from various websites that have been created in the last month or so, couple weeks, that highlight different resources available online that TCU has created to try to bring all of the resources, the support structures, and the activities that you originally would have available to you if you were in person. We're trying to still deliver that level of service, even though everybody is at home, and we're trying to do this online. And so those are just some screenshots and visual representations of some of those websites. So I wanted to start off and just do a really basic breath focus, just a relaxation technique. Can be a really beneficial relaxation technique that you can do anywhere, anytime. It's very simple. It's easy to do. You'll notice that in the relaxation techniques that we recommend, we focus on our breath. And what it feels like to breathe, both the physical sensations, the noise, all the emotions that come with focusing on your breath. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, we know breathing. It's central to who we are. We know that. It's easy for us to focus on that. There are other relaxation or mindfulness techniques where you would focus on imagery or thoughts or other visual cues. And if you're not as practiced with those, they're harder to get into. They take practice. But breathing is the easiest thing to center ourselves back to. The other piece, and what I love about breath focus relaxation techniques, is that you really start to feel this connection between the mind and the body. When you can start to influence your breathing and respiratory rate and how that feels, you can start to calm yourself down kind of from a physiological capability, but then that starts to have a direct impact on your thoughts and how much your brain is scattered and starts to get distracted. And so you really start to have this mental and physical reaction to a relaxation technique. And that can be extremely beneficial. So for me, I love doing breath focus. It's really easy. So what we're going to do is everybody just find a natural place to sit, to lay down, whatever it might be for you. And we're just going to take a second to find ourselves. A breath focus really is deep, deliberate breaths. So what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. You're going to hold your breath for a count of 2 or 3. And then you're going to release your breath through your mouth with slightly pierced lips for a count of 4. So it's basically an in for a 3 or 4, hold for 2 or 3, out for 3 or 4. I say count because you get to determine what that is. I don't do it by seconds necessarily, but you want to try to count 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, out 3, 4. So you get to determine what that looks like. So if you want to practice with me, we're going to breathe in through our nose, holding for a few counts, and out through pierced lips. Breathing in, holding, and out. You can take this at your own pace now. Try to finish this last cycle of breathing. Okay, so that's just a basic, simple breath focus. We did it maybe for 20 seconds. You could do it for a little bit longer if you'd like to. I like it because, again, you can do it anywhere when you're studying. Right when you get into bed, try to help yourself relax a little bit while you're in meetings, while you're in tests. Anytime that you feel that fight or flight moment, that acute stress response, and your heart rate starts to rise, and your breath rate starts to increase, but your depth is lowered just a little bit, so you're getting a little less oxygen. That often triggers that stress response in your brain. Um, and so those are often the times that we would start to do this. When we start to feel that anxiety build up just a little bit, and we're like, okay, something I need to perform right now. I'm about to give a presentation or have an interview or take a test, whatever it might be. And I need to make sure that my brain and everything is focused towards the challenge at hand. And so I'm going to take just 20 seconds right now, right before the test, and I'm going to do some breath focus, right? The more that we can start to control our breath rate, that starts to then impact how much that stress response is felt, both mentally and physically. So as you were doing that, does anybody feel comfortable just sharing how it felt and your thoughts on it?
It felt kind of like a reset moment.
Mm-hmm. Good. Was that a reset moment felt more physically or maybe mentally, emotionally?
I think both physically and mentally, because you can calm your anxiety, and you're focused on kind of clearing your mind and bringing yourself back to a calmer place.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. Are there any other thoughts? We're going to do another relaxation exercise later on in the workshop. Um, but I think doing these regular relaxation techniques, depending on what the situation we're in, sometimes I have really stressful days. And so sometimes I'll do a breath focus literally every hour. I might do it 6, 7 times a day, and that's okay. Again, it's whatever you need to do. I loved your thoughts of it's kind of like a restart. Um, it gets you out of that negative thought loop, that cycle that you're starting to feel, and that anxiety loop. And it really does, if you get practiced at this, you do have the ability to kind of restart your focus in your mind and say, okay, now I'm ready to go. And you might get distracted, you might get pulled into that negative place again, but you can know that you can bring yourself back. I do want to talk a little bit about schedules and breaks. I think working at home, and I have felt this very much so in the last 3 weeks. This is the third week now. Um, I'm taking classes online as well. I'm getting an MBA, and so I've been trying to transition on to how to take class online and learn online. I'm looking at the screen just constantly. So many Zoom meetings, and then 3 hours of class a couple nights a week, and it's a lot. It's exhausting. And so understanding, I think, what took me a little bit to try to understand how to adapt to this new process is I can't entirely approach class and my schedules and calendars, planners, notebooks, all of those things. I can't approach it in the same way that I approached it when I was actually going into the office, when I was in a mindset or a frame of mind where I was sitting in a classroom learning in person. Those things, our brain can be so ingrained with like a certain process, right? I leave work and I drive from one side of campus to the other. I go to the same kind of grad student loungy area that we have in the Neely building. I hang out with my classmates. The more you do that, the more your brain gets trained to understand that that's what's coming. Like it understands that class is is upcoming, and you a lot of times start to focus in towards whatever that task is. Um, I can't necessarily get that same reaction now when I just walk upstairs to go connect to Zoom lecture. And so I need to really understand what is consistent and what's not consistent. And so I think what is really important for us to help with the transition for the next 4 or 5 weeks as we finish out the semester online, to look at all of our plans, our schedules, our calendars, planners, all of those, and try to identify what is consistent and what has stayed, what assignments, obligations, tasks, times, what are consistent from what they were before, and what has changed in that process. And to really go through and redo all of our planners and calendars and schedules to whatever the new reality is. And so I know many of us professors are starting to record classes. And so there's not necessarily a time that you have to go in like every single day. And so that can really start to mess with a schedule of, well, how am I going to be productive? When am I going to listen to this? When am I going to watch this? How am I going to do all these things? It creates a lot of ambiguity. And so sitting down and recreating these schedules can really start to focus your brain again. This idea of self-care, especially in this time of at-home orders and online class and all of that, so much of it really comes to how can you focus your thoughts. In some respects, we have a lot more. Many of our students have a lot more obligations because professors have added in more YouTube videos to watch and extra little assignments to try to translate things that you were learning in person to an online format. So in some respects, we have a lot more to do. But in other respects, we're much less busy than we were before. And so it's hard to motivate ourselves and our brains to stay on track. And so we really need to find that balance between what do I need to try to focus my brain and keep my motivation. We can't entirely do that until we understand the full layout of what my new semester looks like, because this really is, it's like spring semester 2.0. And so the same approach that you take at the beginning of a regular semester where you get all of your life in line and you kind of understand tests and assignments, where and when to be and what to do, I think we really need to go through that process again to help organize ourselves. I think self-care as well can be just as simple as trying to set up a location for yourself that is productive, that will support you being productive. There are a couple concepts that I've talked with some students about and just some one-on-one conversations, and they've really struggled with the fact that they're cohabitating with their family. Some of them have multiple siblings that are in the house as well, so they're either K through 12 trying to do classes now, or they're also college students trying to do their Zoom and online classes. And sometimes we have parents that are also working from home. And so setting boundaries, setting a schedule for your family, and really talking it through of like, I have class at this time, and this time. And so for me to be successful in that, I need a certain place that is quiet, that is away from distractions, that is in this location. And when I'm not in class, I'll be happy to give that to a sibling to work on that. Or maybe, one of our parents has to step in and take that location. But not many of the students that I've talked to have had an intentional conversation with their family members about how to cohabitate, all trying to be productive and get our normal work done. So it starts to get tricky. But I think you have to advocate for yourself. A lot of self-care really comes to being your own advocate in whatever that looks like. And so sometimes you have to make those decisions and be selfish and say, I'm sorry, for my own success, this is what I need. Is it possible for you to support that? And I would love to know what you need to be successful as well. And maybe there can be a common place between both of those. But being okay with setting up some boundaries and having those conversations. And I think, again, just really trying to avoid locations that have distractions. yeah, having class out on your deck might be really beneficial, fun. It's beautiful. The weather's getting nicer here, at least in Texas. Um, but are the birds chirping and you notice your mind starting to, um, you know, waver, to get distracted, you're not able to pay attention? Well, maybe that's not the best option. And so I think you really have to be honest with yourself of where you need to be productive and where you cannot be productive. And lastly, on this, we're so used to taking those small breaks. And usually, you might even have 2 and 3 and 4 hours of class back to back to back, even. And that's really stressful. But usually, we have a break, in location, mentally. We get up, we walk from one classroom to another, from one building to another. We oftentimes will at least get 2 minutes of some sunshine in between each one of those classes. Here at home, it's so easy just to go from one meeting to another meeting or class to class to class and never leave for 4 days in a row. And that really starts to take a negative toll on your body, your mind, mentally and emotionally. And so I think we really, shouldn't underestimate the value of taking that, like, even if you have back to back to back classes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes outside even, and use that as like an unofficial passing period. Walk around the house twice. It might take you a minute, but that actually can go really long ways to, refocus your mind, to get you away from the stressors that you have. It gets your blood flowing. It keeps you motivated, or sorry, energized. Um, and yeah, it will keep you motivated longer throughout the day. Um, so those are just some really quick and easy ways, I think, for, some basic kind of time management, setting up systems for yourself to be successful. Are there any thoughts on any of what I brought up? Um, to help us through our, um, kind of management, mindfulness, relaxation techniques, um, calming any of the anxiety that we might be feeling from all of the changes that we have. We understand, and we've been promoting, different apps to use for a long time, but I think that they're just even more important now, since we're kind of connected for everything. Um, Headspace is a really great option. Calm.com is another really amazing option. They have guided meditations, different relaxation exercises. They have calming music. You can create your own custom white noise, to help you fall asleep. For some of us, maybe even to be on the background while we're studying. Um, and so I think that many of us knew about these options. Um, a lot of these self care concepts are not new. But I think the times that we're in, really require kind of a newfound dedication to being proactive, around managing our self care, managing our anxieties, um, and our physical wellness, and just all of those components. And so I definitely want to give a lot of weight to, some of the apps that are out there. You might use other ones, but these are two that we highly recommend. I wanted to do another stress activity right now, and this is another relaxation technique. It takes a little bit more, effort than just a breath focus like what we did last time, but it does incorporate deep breathing. And again, back to that piece of when we can control our respiratory rate and we can start to kind of manage the in and out, and we reduce the effects of that hyperventilation, we can start to lower our heart rate, which in turn starts to lower the chemical reaction that we have in our brain, and the mental effects that we have from that stress. And so hopefully, yeah, we're going to have just a small little spike of our stress, but if we can start to be proactive about that, we that stress might only spike to maybe like a 7 on a 1 to 10 scale, and I can still be productive and successful with my anxiety at a 7. If it spikes into a 9 or a 10, though, that really starts to be debilitating and can be hard to continue on. And so what I wanted to do for this next exercise is progressive muscle relaxation. Progressive muscle relaxation, it's a combination of muscle contractions. So we're going to clench muscles in certain parts of our body, and I'm going to guide us through this. While we contract the muscles, we're going to breathe in deeply, just like we did before. We're then going to hold the breath and the muscle contraction for a couple seconds. And then I'll say release, and you're going to release the muscle contraction and the breath at the same time. And when you do that, you're going to feel a bit of a calming sensation come over your body. And so this can be really great for the mental impacts of reducing stress. But because of the muscle contractions, also with relieving any built up tension that you have. Oftentimes, I'm looking at a laptop right now, and I'm really trying to keep good posture, but for hours and hours and hours on day, just always looking at a laptop and never being able to walk around and get up, that starts to take a toll. And so I can get a lot of stress and tension in my muscles, like my shoulders, my neck, maybe even my lower back. So contracting those muscles and releasing them, that starts to bring more blood into the muscles. As they bring oxygen to the muscles to create energy, they start to pull out some of the byproducts from that you might be feeling, like lactic acid, some other byproducts that are stored up in your muscles when you have really prolonged muscle contraction. And so this is kind of a calming sensation over your body as well. So with that, we're going to do progressive muscle relaxation. Find a comfortable position in your chair or laying down, whichever you prefer. Feet underneath your knees, hands just in a natural position. I'm going to start us with our feet, and I'm going to say contract the muscles in your feet. That means curl your toes. Again, breathe in while you're contracting the muscles, hold the breath in the contraction, and then I'll say release, and we'll release both. So as we start, contract the muscles in your feet and breathe in deeply, holding the contraction and the breath, and release. Good. To our calves next. So you don't have to lift your heels off of the ground. You can keep your feet flat on the ground. Just try to make your lower legs strong. So contract your muscles and breathe in, holding, and release. Good. To our upper legs now, so basically our thighs. You can keep your legs still. You don't need to kick your leg out, but we just want to make your upper leg strong. And breathe in, holding the contraction and breath, and release. Good. To our hands next, so we're going to make fists and breathe in. And release. Good. To our abdomen, so it's hard to breathe in deeply and contract our abs. So just brace your abs. You don't need to suck your belly button into your spine, and really focus on like chest breathing, diaphragm breathing, rather than belly breathing. So we're going to breathe in and contract your abs. And release. Good. To our upper arms, so our biceps and our triceps, leaving your arms still, but just bracing your arms, making them strong. And breathe in. And release. Good. To our shoulders next. So we're going to raise up our shoulders and breathe in. And release. Good. And the last one is our face, and we're going to scrunch up our face and breathe in. And release. So that was progressive muscle relaxation. So what did you all think? And even thinking back to some of the relaxation concepts we talked about, how do you feel like these could be beneficial in your daily lives kind of moving forward?
I'll be brave.
Thank you, Robin.
I find it like really, I really like that, like we can feel our feelings. Like when I think of like progressive, like relaxation, like muscle relaxation, like you clench up, like at least for me, like I clench up my fist, and like to me that kind of like symbolizes like I can hold on to anger, and I can be angry, and that's like an okay feeling. It's not like bad,
Right.
but also that like I can release it, and like it really helps just like not mentally but like physically too, like very symbolic. I like it.
That's awesome. I think that's one of the first times that I've ever heard that association, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, I 100% agree. I think you can definitely, especially when you're using this in times when your anxiety is really high, or you're having certain negative feelings and thoughts, 100% you can kind of start processing those, both on a physical and a mental level with this. Great. For both relaxation techniques that we did, the breath focus and progressive muscle relaxation, um, you can do it throughout the day. One thing that we recommend and we love to do is relaxation techniques right when you get into bed. It helps calm your mind and your body to a level to where your body is able to fall asleep. It's able to relax quicker so it can fall asleep faster. Um, and that, I mean, if everybody could get more sleep, everybody would be functioning so much better, and just love life more. The sleep is so beneficial for almost every aspect of our life. But this can be another tool that you use to try to improve the level of sleep that you have, both in the quality of the sleep and being able to reach deeper levels of sleep, but both in the amount of time that you're asleep. And you don't necessarily need to dedicate any more hours or sleep time to that. You can get more benefits from sleep if you're just able to fall asleep quicker, and get into those beneficial cycles of sleep quicker. So that's another way that we would recommend this. I do want to focus just a little bit on reframing our thoughts, and really just reflection on where our lives are, and where our situations are. And this is going to be a little bit broad, but I think there are some really beneficial pieces to this. Um, you can do this when you're talking about reflection and reframing your thoughts. You can do it in so many different ways. You can journal, you can process with others, and just have, text conversations, phone calls, house party gatherings, Zoom calls, whatever you want to do, different Google Hangouts. Um, or you can just sit and reflect on your own. All of those can be beneficial for you to try to process all of the thoughts and feelings and emotions that you have going on with all of the change. Some um, recommendations that we have, and know that that's different for every person. And so when I recommend any one of those styles, there's not necessarily one that is better than another, because I think that we react differently. Each person reacts differently to a different process. And so for some, they love journaling. And for others, it's really hard to get into a journaling process and there's a frame of mind, and they don't connect to it to the same level. So understand that you want to try to find something that works for you. But as we do this, when we looked back at the beginning of the presentation, we had a list of some of the stressors that we had, the major things that we're dealing with. You don't ignore any of those thoughts. We want to focus on, but we don't want to focus on what the stressor is, and not be able to move past that, right? If we acknowledge it, but we can't move past it, then we're going to be continuously in a state of negativity. And for many of us, I've regularly heard, well, I just wish things were back to normal. I wish, life is so much harder because I don't get to do this and I don't get to do that. I think we need to challenge ourselves, again, not eliminate this, but challenge ourselves to have those feelings and to process those thoughts, but to focus on what is versus what could be or what used to be. Thinking in the past and living in the past and not accepting the new normal, and what that does is it starts to create a lot of tension within ourselves. We have a lot of longing for a different time. It doesn't mitigate the challenges that we have right now. It doesn't reduce them necessarily, but what we want to do is focus on, what can I do to improve the situation that I'm in now? How can I grow? How can I learn? How am I going to improve by going through this process? And what do I still have left? Like, I have a place to live. I'm still able to get my education. I still have friends that I'm able to connect with. It's in a different way, yes, and it sucks. It's not as good as if it was in person, but we still have that, right? And so I think reframing those thoughts from I'm missing out on all of these friendships and all of these great things to my friendships just look a little different, but it doesn't mean that they're worse. It doesn't mean that I don't have those friends. It just means that we need to do a better job of communicating. And so I think this starts to lead to then that next thought of trying to think about and identify what's truly important to you. There's definitely longing for the fun times and going out, going to the movies, doing all of these things, going to different socials with friends. But what's the most important thing? I think when we think about that, it's not necessarily the social, it's the connection that you have with the people around you, right? So let's focus in on creating connection rather than, well, I really wish that we could have a social outing or like a party or go to an excursion. The excursion is great, and oftentimes we focus on that as being the beneficial piece when we get together with friends. But when we really start to delve into it, the most important point is that we're actually hanging out with our friends and we have a sense of community, care, love, and support. And we still have that, and you can still create that. And so I think focusing on what's truly important to you in these times, I think that's going to start to reframe our thoughts to from kind of that negative focus to a more positive focus. It doesn't, again, get rid of the fact that it's harder, but we can accept it more. The anxiety around our friendships and our communication and all of these pieces don't feel as strong when we start to accept and understand the new reality that we're living, but we're able to adapt to it. And so we can start to see benefits from that. And then again, identifying what success looks like to you. And this can be in so many different ways. It could be in the academic classroom. It could be on the social kind of like relationship level, being a good, family member, sister, brother, child, a friend, whatever it might be, and focusing more on what actually defines success rather than sometimes we get focused on when we're comfortable with life we can get focused on external things with tangible things, like I amass certain things, I buy things, I wear certain things. Those don't in reality always matter. When push comes to shove, oftentimes it really is at a much more basic level, and success really starts to look like the relationships you have with the people around you, how much you care and give to people, and what you're doing for your community, rather than what you own and have and experiences you do, all of that. So I think that there's just some ways that we can start to challenge ourselves to refocus our thoughts towards a different way, a different perspective of looking at things, rather than getting so honed in on one area. Does anybody have any perspective or thoughts on this? I am pulling up a website real quick because we are going to move on to looking at some resources that TCU has for you. Okay, so I think those were just some basic concepts that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about physical activity when we go to these websites, this website. And so I want to keep kind of some of these thoughts around reframing, creating community, what's important to you, how to manage your anxiety and stress as we go through this. So I'm going to change my share. Okay, so I guess anybody, Robin, anybody, if you want to tell me, can you see the student activities website?
I don't see it.
You don't see it.
Wait.
I see it.
Oh, you do?
I see it now, yeah.
Okay. So I'm scrolling up and down, if that is helpful. Student activities has kind of taken on this charge for the whole university. So this really is a university-wide initiative of many different departments on campus to provide the resources and the support structure that TCU students would have had in person, and to put those online. And so if you go to TCU Student Activities main website, on their main page, they have a button that says Virtual Community. When you click on that, it takes you to this TCU at Home. And here, there's a variety of different things. So what to do at TCU is still active, and all of the events that we have, whether it's concerts, comedians, different movies, things like that, we're still showing those. We're just doing them virtually. And so comedians are literally doing the same comedy show that they were going to do for TCU in person, but they're doing it from their house. And so it's a private, comedy show just for TCU community. That's where these workshops are being recorded and being put onto this website. So this can be a really great tool for you if you're looking for ways to stay well while you're at home. There are, I'll go to virtual support services in a second, but there are two pieces of wellness at home and fit at home. Wellness at home is where we're going to post these videos. They're going to be posted onto a YouTube channel so that individuals can watch these at any time. And so you could even go through this. I gave a mindfulness and relaxation workshop earlier in the week, or last week. And so we did more relaxation techniques. And so if you wanted to try that, you could watch that at any time. I do want to bring up the Fit at Home. So Campus Recreation and Wellness Promotion has put on a lot of their regular classes that we had, group fitness classes, and we have a schedule of live classes. So this whole this whole section right here are live classes that you have that you can check in on, and the link for those. And so they're in-home workouts, a really great option for you. Now, if you don't have the schedule to be able to accommodate these live classes, we have recorded multiple different at-home workouts. This is our colleague, Ryan. And the only weights that I have are essentially things that you would find in your house, very slow. He might be using some low weights, but things that you can have with, like, gallon jugs of water, or large cans of tomatoes, or anything like that. But then also, maybe you just put all your books in your bag, right? And you just have your bag on your, wearing your bag while you're doing squats. That's the same as doing a weighted squat. And so Ryan has put up multiple different videos, and he'll continue to record these as you want to go, or as the semester progresses. Computer doesn't want to go back. I'll pull it up again. I don't know why my computer doesn't want to go back. Okay, so again, back to TCU Student Activities homepage, virtual community, and it brings you back to that TCU at home. I do want to highlight some of these resources that they have for things you can do at any time. And so when you go here to Move and Be Mindful, they have a train for a 5K run. They have different meditation websites, mindfulness websites. So each one of these resources has multiple different options for you, and you can do these at any time. They have some really great options for, we created TCU coloring PDF pages. So if you click on those, you can actually download, like, a picture of the frog fountain, and you can color that, whether you print it off and actually color it on paper, or with a stylus on your computer, whatever it is. So there's a lot of TCU pictures that we've turned into coloring book size. There's TCU crossword searches, crossword puzzles. There's just a whole bunch of different stuff. There's also a lot of virtual resources that we have for, like, academic advising is still doing academic advising appointments online, counseling and mental health center, alcohol and drug education. They're still seeing clients and talking with students. So you have the ability to meet with a counselor if you want one. The Let's Talk program is still meeting with students either over the phone or online. And so there's contact information on how to reach out to them. Dean's Life. There's a variety of different services there that can help in this process. And so just know that those communities that we've had this entire time while you're connected to TCU still exist. Just because we're at a distance doesn't mean that our connection to the community has wavered. We're Horned Frogs for life. We're all about purple, and that is still here for you. It just might look a little different right now. And so with that, really, I just wanted to bring up any questions, thoughts, talk about other ways to manage wellness.
Hey, Brad, you said this earlier in your presentation. Also, wonderful presentation, by the way. Thank you so much for hosting it.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
It was just really affirming for me to hear that, like, when we're going to work and going to class and going to these places to get, like, ready, maybe even before class or work, like, our brains, like, create, like, pathways that get accustomed and, like, ready for that environment. And so it was just, like, nice to hear that it's like, oh wow, there's like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It was just, like, really, really nice to hear that, like, it's a thing, right?
Right, right.
So I appreciate you saying that. It was just really nice, and I really like the resources at the end too, with the what you pulled up.
Yeah. I think I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think that there are a couple pieces with what you just said. Yeah, I mean, 100%. Our brains and our bodies get used to a certain routine, and we get ramped up and we cycle down based off of the time of day, what we normally do. If we have the same like bedtime routine, it starts to put our brain in a process of, ooh, sleep time is coming up. We have the exact same thing when we go to the same classes, the same time, we drive the same route to work, we have all of the same routines, and there's some comfortableness with that. And so there's two pieces. One, understand that you still can create that. You can recreate those pathways and those associations with class and work at home. You just have to like go through the process of doing it consistently and trying to stick to a schedule and really start to train your body and mind to that process. But the other thing that I want to pay attention to is your thoughts, maybe the affirming thoughts, and understand that, you know, it is normal. Like a lot of us for the last week or so have been having some just trouble concentrating, and just we don't have the same motivation and we're just not as much there. And so much of that can come with the fact that we just don't really leave our house often and our routines are completely messed up and everything is different. And that can start to explain at least why maybe for the last couple of weeks we've not felt like ourselves. And that's okay. And we can still move from that stage. And we can get better and we can improve. And you're not always going to be like that. Are there any other thoughts, questions, anything that I can answer?
I just wanted to share that I have been keeping a journal since I've been working from home. And it's been really helpful at the end of the day to kind of go through, even though the routine hasn't changed very much, I can still write down, you know, thoughts and feelings. And my main motivation for starting the journal was because I felt like we're kind of living through a historical moment.
Mm,
And I'd like to have a personal record of what I was doing and how I was feeling about all of this.
yeah,
But it's turned into a place to kind of put down on paper the anxieties and the frustrations. And I try every entry I make, I try to put in one good thing, make sure I put in one thing I'm thankful for or one positive thing that happened, just so that it's kind of a mental exercise to make sure I'm looking for positive things too.
good. I love that. Thank you. And good for you for starting that during this process. I think that's great.
Thanks.
Well, if there are no other pieces, I appreciate it. Definitely let me know if there's anything that I can help with. Um, I would love to continue to keep conversations going, to connect with any of you if you'd like. And I hope you have a really good day. Thank you.
Thanks, Brand.